Thank you very much. My name is Karen Ocamb, and I'm the news editor for Frontiers in LA, which is a gay publication here. So first of all, I want to thank you very much for your service and all the service members here and the veterans here, because we're gay Americans, so we appreciate the service. Sir, you're talking about the enormous pressure that service members are under, and I'm wondering if you've imagined that pressure in addition to serving in silence under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And so there's a two-part question. First of all, will you include all this PTSD in the report that the working group is going to consider, because there's stress and anxiety serving in silence, number one. And number two, I'm wondering if you would commit now to saying that at the end of, when the report is due in December, the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell implementation report is due on December 1st, 60 days thereafter, if you would immediately call for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and implementation of that, because otherwise you're continuing to have all these service members suffering in silence. Thank you very much.
This is where we are in the process right now with respect to the review and potential repeal for the Don't Ask, Don't Tell legislation. As I try to point out, this is a law. This is something that our Congress must do. I've been pretty clear where I've been on this in my testimony on the 2nd of February last year, that it's my personal view that we need to move on here, and I believe it's the right thing to do. That said, it's really Congress that makes, potentially will make these changes. And there was a legislation passed in the Senate Armed Services Committee, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, in the full House, that supported this. And the language in the legislation I'm comfortable with, quite frankly, and I've said I would have preferred that the legislation wait until we finish the review, because there are very strong views on this, an awful lot of emotion. The fact is, in terms of any kind of objective analysis on how this will affect those it will affect the most, if and when the law changes, isn't out there. And so the purpose of the review is for those of us in the military, and my top priority is the readiness to execute our missions. And there are different views on what this current law does and what the change might do, but to those it would affect the most, we just don't know. So the purpose of this review is to make sure their voices are heard and we understand it from them and their families, then to take that into consideration as we move ahead. So I clearly can't speak to the results of that before I see it. The current legislation, and again, predicting a legislative time clock can be challenging, and while these two pieces of legislation passed, there's still a lot that needs to be done to complete it. And in the legislation, there's language, part of the language says that myself, the Secretary of Defense, and the President can certify that we are ready to proceed. Part of the reason for the review is to understand what the implementation issues will be. I am the senior military leader in this country. I have a responsibility to this force to lead them and to understand what challenges would be associated with that, and to both prepare them to do that should this law change. So that's where we are right now. That's literally where we are as far as the process is concerned. With respect to the PTS aspect of it, we will initiate part of the review. It is being headed up by a four-star general by the name of Carter Ham, and the Secretary of Defense Gates General Counsel, Jay Johnson. And I have great regard for both of them. They have been in front of groups totaling about 30,000 as of a week or 10 days ago when I last talked to General Ham about this. That said, we will initiate a survey of several 100,000 members and families here, and starting towards the end of this month. That survey will actually, and it's big enough, and the questions are the right questions, So we will be able to statistically neck this down to meaningful results and understand, again, from them, and their voices are very important here, how they feel about this and what their concerns are. We also want to understand as much about all the issues that we potentially would have to deal with. So there's an awful lot of work that goes on, and then it gets me back, that is going on right now, and it gets me back to part of what I talked about earlier. This is a force under great stress right now, given 2 wars, number of deployments, etc. And I do not want this issue, I do not want the United States military put in the middle of this issue and electrified as we move ahead. It hasn't been thus far, and I hope we can continue the review along those lines. And I think responsible leadership throughout is very, very important as we move ahead. And I have no doubt that we will get through the review. The President has made his intent very clear that he wants this law changed. So I'm talking about process and where we are, but at the top of my list is a concern for the men and women and their families who this will affect the most, and making sure that as we move ahead and execute whatever missions we have, that we do it as well as we can possibly do it, equal to the level of excellence I talked about that they have, that I see in our force right now.
But it affects us too.
I understand I understand where we are. I understand the law. I mean the reason I believe it's time is I cannot. I find it very difficult to support the fact that someone has to come to work every day and lie about who they are and what they, what they believe in an institution that values integrity. And I was raised in this institution, so I've been very clear about that. Again, I'm not the one in charge of changing the law, and I don't expect to be in the future. It's really up to Congress.
Thank you.